to speak tonight. At this point, we're going to move on with our agenda. The next item on the agenda is the business agenda. Under instruction, consider and take action on a recommendation to form a non-standing board committee under Board Policy 1150 for the single purpose of reevaluating the district's continued use of the Redskin logo and mascot, with the member composition and other matters related to the committee to be addressed at the August 2020 regular board meeting. Dr. Hartzler.
Thank you, President McAdams, board members. Let me just say I have a few comments to make before I would ask you to consider this recommendation, and that is that I'd like to remind us all that with democracy, I think that each generation must be somewhat renegotiated and reinvented through dialogue. This is vital to our existence as a civilization, and it is through this dialogue that we come to better understand one another and learn to live together, despite even our deepest of convictions. Over the last year, I have received a number of concerns regarding the continued use of the Redskin mascot. Of particular concern to me is that I am now hearing more from those within the union community. In the past, these concerns have primarily come from outside the union district. When the Board of Education made the decision to retain the mascot in 2003, it was after much collaboration from union stakeholders and several of our own Native American parents and students. Now, with the concerns primarily coming from within union, patrons, staff members, students, alumni, along with the recent events across the country concerning the use of Native American related logos and mascots, I believe it is time to reevaluate the district's continued use of the Redskins logo and mascot. In order to give voice to a broad range of viewpoints, it is my recommendation that the Board of Education approve generally the appointment of a non-standing committee for this purpose pursuant to Board Policy 1150. The exact composition of the members of this committee, as well as the committee's clear instructions, scope, and time limits, will be presented to the board for approval at the regular August board meeting. At this time, my thought is that the committee would be comprised of 35 members, consisting of the following: 4 patrons appointed by the PTA Council of Union, 2 school administrators appointed by the superintendent, 2 Board of Education members appointed by the board who would serve as a resource or guidance. They would be non-voting. 4 teachers, 2 elementary and 2 secondary, appointed by the Union Classroom Teachers Association. 2 support personnel appointed by USPA. 2 staff members, 1 from Fine Arts and 1 from Athletics, appointed by the superintendent. And 2 parents from the Union's Indian Education Committee, appointed by the board members of this committee. 2 high school students from Union's Indian Education Committee, appointed by the board members of this committee. 5 patrons, 1 from each board zone, appointed by the Board of Education. 4 current class presidents, 1 freshman, 1 sophomore, 1 junior, and 1 senior. 4 alumni, appointed by the Union Schools Education Foundation Board. 1 tribal member from the Creek Nation, appointed by the principal chief, who would serve as a resource and would be non-voting. And 1 tribal member from the Cherokee Nation, appointed by the principal chief, who would be a resource and also non-voting. The president of the Board of Education will select the chairperson from one of the above named committee members once the committee, if approved, Further, I intend to recommend that the committee meet at a minimum at least once monthly, provide monthly status reports to the board, and make its final report and recommendations to the board no later than the regular December board meeting, unless the committee reports that it believes additional time is needed. With that said, I would respectfully like to ask the board again to consider and take my recommendation of establishing or forming a non-standing board committee under Board Policy 1150 for the single purpose of reviewing the district's continued use of the Redskins logo and mascot.
Before the motion is put forth, if I can make a few comments, and for all of you out there, school board laws, this is the only way we get to discuss this. We don't get to convene secretly or separately. We only get to discuss this in an open meeting. So I'll signal to my colleagues in this format that I plan to vote for the reevaluation when the motion is made. But I'd like to give you some of my thought process on this as we think through this. It's this isn't something that just came about all of a sudden. It's something we, Dr. Hartzler and I have been talking about for quite some time with meetings with various folks going back to October. And I think we probably had this on a natural timeline for some time this fall. It obviously gets accelerated with the national attention that our friends in Washington are getting. And so while it looks like a coincidence, or it looks like that we're rushing to something because something on a national scale has happened, in reality, it was on a natural timeline. It has been accelerated. To all of you that see the mascot that we have as an issue of race and racism, I'm sympathetic to that. I understand your experiences. You would have seen it through that lens. For those that see it as derogatory and offensive, I can just say it was never intended to be that way. A school mascot is selected as a badge of honor, heritage, or strength, and there's little doubt in my mind in 1945 when this was adopted that the board at that time had that in mind. I just can't imagine any school selecting a mascot and saying, hey, let's pick something that we see as racist. Hey, let's see something that can be derogatory and offensive. So nevertheless, the issue for me is about stereotyping. It's stereotyping a class of people by use of mascots, logos, and emblems. I very much respect the fact that if I'm wearing such a logo or mascot or emblem, and I'm hearing the other team yelling at me, kill the Indians, kill the Redskins, kill the Warriors, whatever it might be, then it becomes personal. And so from my vantage point, it just seems that we've got bigger things that we need to be addressing as opposed to controversy over a mascot. I was pleased to hear the gentleman talk about all that Union has done to go to great lengths to provide Native American education, connect our Native American families with tribal enrollment and benefits. And I don't think it was spoken here tonight, but as we all know, our schools sit on reservation land that was recently affirmed by the Supreme Court. So I want to be clear, all those facts run counter to anything that this board or predecessors would view as racism, derogatory and offensive. I believe we've gone to great lengths to counter that. But I do want stereotyping explored, and I want it explored on three fronts, really: mascots, logos, and emblems. So we are seeking constructive dialogue, and I cannot thank you all enough tonight with the way in which you delivered your comments. I was not a board member, but I remember sitting through the discussions 17 years ago, and it would have been nice to have had this type of dialogue at that time. So we're seeking constructive dialogue that results in constructive solutions. My personal vantage point, I would like to know, is it just our mascot that is offensive, or do mascots such as warriors, Indians, cowboys, savages, chiefs, do they fall in the same category? I don't know, but I would like for that. I would like for the committee to explore that. And so what will the committee's findings be with respect to emblems such as arrows, arrowheads, bows, feathers, headdress, teepees, etc.? Because that crosses a whole lot more than what we're dealing with, even though our issue is the only one that we need to address. So those are my thoughts. I wanted to give the background information on that. Again, this is the only way we get to talk.
I would also like to clarify, because I've had members of the community ask me, we are not at this time voting for a new mascot. This committee will not choose a new mascot if it's to change. This is just to evaluate the one we have. If this mascot is retired, then that'll be a completely different committee that will choose a different mascot as well. Are you ready for a motion? Is there any more?
Well, I might clarify a little bit, Ms. Homerman, that certainly, as I stated, my recommendation is that this is kind of a single-purpose committee. But I'm not sure, depending on the outcome of this, we'll then reevaluate whether the committee perhaps might want to extend on, if the decision is made to retire. So I just wanted to kind of correct that to say that this is one single purpose, and I want to keep the main thing with my recommendation. And again, the focus needs to be on reevaluating the continued use of our mascot and logo.
All right. Are there any other comments? All right. I will entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve, pursuant to policy 1150, the formation of a non-standing committee for the purpose of reevaluating the district's continued use of the Redskins logo and mascot, with the board to approve at its regular August board meeting the members comprising the committee, together with committee's clear instructions, scope, and time limits.
Second. All right. Ms. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Kinnear?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. Motion passes.